Hello there, I am out on location again today, painting in the great outdoors. I'm at another one of my local parks here, and this is the rocky and craggy one. So we're going to paint this area behind me right here, all kinds of cool rocks and trees and stuff. So let's do this. All right, so there's what we're going to paint right there. And then you slowly cross the street here because I don't want to make you guys dizzy. And here is my little setup right here. I've got a little tripod here with my Etchr Slate Mini on it. My nice comfy chair with back support. Got to have that. And then of course my little rolly cart, which is what got it all out here because that's a lot of equipment. And that chair is a bit heavy. So anyways, I have already drawn it because, to be honest with you, I just don't have very much battery for my phone for recording. And I'm speeding it up for you, but it took about an hour, I think, once I started painting. I'm actually going to use Daniel Smith gouache today for this because gouache is so much easier to paint plein air. If you make mistakes, you can paint over them and not have to worry about the transparency of watercolor. I'm starting out by preparing a couple of greens. I'm starting with Sap Green and adding in burnt umber to make it a more natural color, and then I'm just using olive green straight out of the tube. For the lawn area behind this hill, I'm just using that olive green and watering it down significantly. And then I'm also watering down my other green, and I'm just going to cover the entire background behind all of this rock in a nice light wash so that we can come back over it and do the trees later. Now that I have a nice base of green, I'm coming back in with darker mixtures of the same color, and I'm just adding in some leaf texture in the background here. Most of this is going to be covered up, but you know, a little bit of texture can't hurt. While all of that is drying, I'm going to mix some burnt umber with some Payne's gray, a little bit heavier on the gray because these rocks are kind of grayish, and we're going to use this as a base color for the rocks. I'm going to water that color down significantly, and I'm just going to use that to cover all of this entire foreground area because, I mean, it all has the same base color. So we're just going to cover the entire thing with this color, and then I'm going to come back in with some other colors and drop them in for some variation. Like for instance, this is some yellow ochre that I'm just adding in for some variation. Next, I'm mixing up a darker version of my same color with burnt umber and Payne's gray, and we're going to use that to start bringing in some of these rock details. You know, normally with watercolor, you work from light to dark, and you wouldn't dare put something this dark in the beginning of a painting like this, but this is gouache. We have a lot more leeway there. You can actually paint light colors over dark items. So I'm going to go ahead and establish these dark values pretty quick. Then I darken up the shadow side of this little piece of rock that's jutting out towards us. It looks like it's been cut, and to be honest with you, it probably was because this park actually used to be a limestone quarry back in the 50s. Next, I'm darkening up this piece of land that's right underneath all of this line of trees, and that is going to help bring the rest of it forward in our eyes and create a lot of depth. After adding some dry brushing texture here in the foreground, it is time to add in some trees. So I've got the same mixture of brown, but I've added some more Payne's gray into it, and I am adding in the tree trunks for now. So some of them will be darker than the others. Those are the ones that are more in shadow, and the ones that are forward, I'm adding in some titanium white to my mixture because more sunlight is hitting them. And then we're just adding the trees on the other side. I'm going to start adding in some foliage here, and I'm going to start out by using some yellow ochre and some cadmium yellow just to add in some variation in tone here. You really don't want everything to be the same tone of green. Mixing up a more concentrated sap green and burnt umber version here, and we're going to come back in and do some more of the foliage here. I'm just going to go right over the top of the trunks and just add in all of these kind of leaf shapes here. And I'm basically just starting with this darker color as the shadow areas of the foliage. And some thicker olive green, and we're coming back in with that different color to add in some variation. Now there is a lighter tree that is right in front of all of that shadow, so I'm adding in some titanium white and going right over the top of it. That is the beauty of gouache. I'm adding more white into my brown mixture, and we are coming back in to work on the rocks some more. And really what I'm doing here is just an awful lot of modeling. So I'm darkening areas that need to be darker, I'm leaving the lighter areas light, and just, you know, bringing that shape out of everything. I'm adding a lot more of the burnt umber into my mixture here, and now I'm coming back in with this reddish, more warm version of that brown, and that is for all of the dirt that's surrounding the rocks. It has a lot warmer of a tone to it and much darker than it has been, so I'm just adding all of that in. So far everything is still kind of blending in together, so I'm bringing in some pretty much just straight Payne's gray, maybe almost, not quite. And I'm adding in some more severe dark tones here, and that will start to bring things forward and make things more 3D. I mean, you can't have the light without the dark, so we're just darkening up all the shadows, and that will start to bring some of this into more of a 3D realm. I've switched to my number 4 round brush here for the tiny little details. I'm just adding in some of the cracks in the rocks and a lot of the dark shadows and things like that with it. Mixing in an awful lot of white to my brown mixture, and we're going to add in some of the highlights. The highlights also is one of the things that really just makes everything pop, and that gives everything that roundness and that just sense of form. Adding in even more white on this one for the very highest highlights. Adding a lot of cadmium yellow and white to my olive green, and adding in this little bit of the tree that peeks over the edge of the rock. I think the dirt is still blending in too much to the rock area, so I am darkening up the dirt, and that will just help to differentiate the two. Next, I'm adding in quite a bit of Payne's Gray into my Sap Green mixture, and we are going to use that for the deepest, darkest shadows in the tree area. That's going to begin to push the shadow ones back further into the distance and push the lighter ones closer to the viewer. And that is going to afford us a lot of depth. And I think that's about all I'm going to do while I'm sitting out here. I think it is time to head home back into the studio to add a few final details. Now I'm back in the studio, and I'm looking at photos that I took while I'm there, and I'm really just darkening up some of the dark areas and lightening up some of the highlight areas and just adding a few final little details.
And here's the finished product, and I've got to say I did have a whole lot of fun doing this, and I do think it turned out to be fairly convincing. I mean, there's a few flaws here and there, but it's just a sketch anyway, and part of it is just getting out and enjoying the lovely weather and the beautiful scenery. So I call that a win-win.
And there you have it, a nice little plein air session in gouache. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that stuff, because that's how this channel gets to grow. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in 2 weeks.